Hey, I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex, coming to you from my hotel room in Las Vegas as I perform at the MGM Grand this week. That's how dedicated I am to this series. Every month, I do a video on the best games coming to retail, and I also do a separate video on the best expansions coming to retail. That's what you're watching right now. The best expansions coming to retail in January 2023. These are games you can go out and get easily and immediately right now. All right, let's get into it. Asmodee and Simon are releasing Zombicide Running Wild. This is an expansion to their Zombicide Undead or Alive game. If you know anything about Zombicide, it's a cooperative game for 1 to 6 players where you are trying to survive zombies and kill zombies and that sort of stuff. There's been a bunch of versions of Zombicide with a lot of different themes. You know, there's been the regular high school theme, and then there was the, medieval theme and the space theme. Well, Zombicide Undead or Alive was the Western-themed board game. The Running Wild expansion for Zombicide Undead or Alive features 6 new survivors that have the ability to go on foot or on horseback. You gotta have horses in a Western. You gotta have horses in a Western. So, if you are a rider in this game, you're faster, you're stronger, you can evade zombies, but you cannot enter buildings. Horses don't want to go into buildings. They like the outside. They like the outside, so you got to wait to get into buildings. So if you're looking for more content for Zombicide Undead or Alive, and you want to add horses to them, then you could do that with Running Wild. I am wildly allergic to horses, so I won't be doing that myself. The last time I went to medieval times, I ended up in the hospital. Yeah, I went to a horse show forgetting that I was allergic to horses. That was a dumb move for me, but that's a story for another time. Zombicide Asmodee and Simon are releasing a second expansion to Zombicide Undead or Alive as well this month called Gears and Guns. So there's a lot of content for the Zombicide Undead or Alive if you want it. In Gears and Guns, it makes the base game in an alternate reality, an alternate setting in a world powered by steam. So it's like the steampunk version of Zombicide Undead or Alive. There are steam rules which unleashes tremendous power against zombies at the risk of getting depleted. There's new engineer class for survivors and more. So you got a lot of stuff to check out if you are a Zombicide fan. Board Game Tables, which now changed their name to All Play, is releasing 3 expansions to some of their great games this month. The first of which I'll say is Bites New Recipes. So Bites is a really fun 20-minute sort of family weight game that you can play with anybody where you are moving along this pathway and collecting stuff. But the difference of that game versus other move along a pathway is you don't have your own player pieces. You can control any of the player pieces and move them forward to collect things, and then whatever gets to the end of the line first will have different scoring cards. And that was one of the things that made that game replayable, was a lot of different scoring cards. So every time you played it, you could pick different scoring cards and have a new challenge for the game. Well, Bites New Recipes really focuses on adding a bunch more of those scoring cards to the game. There are a dozen new rule cards that have noticeably larger effects than the cards in the base games. And in addition to the rule cards, they'll have new characters and objects to play with. So, the base game was very replayable, but you might have exhausted it. Well, now you have some new challenges to do in Bites. All Play / Board Game Tables is also releasing Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem. This is mayhem. Well, in Kabuto Sumo, there was a platform, and you were had your own player piece on the platform, but there were a bunch of other things up there as well. And you were pushing stuff on to the platform to try to knock off things, to add them to your supply, and then ultimately, hopefully, knock off your opponent's player piece and win the game that way. It's one of those sort of classic coin pusher feel, but with a very silly theme about beetles in a wrestling arena. And the expansion, Kabuto Sumo Total Mayhem, provides all of the wrestlers with a variety of what pro wrestlers call foreign objects. So, things that wrestlers use like ladders and chairs and that add a bunch of chaos to the performance of wrestling. Well, now that is in Kabuto Sumo as well. And one of the things they say is that, it enhances the physics of the game and hopefully expedites the game. If I had one complaint about the base game, it was that sometimes it took too long. You wanted it to be like a 15-minute game, and sometimes it would be a 30-minute game. And so this, has new victory conditions and expedites the game and adds more strategic depth. So I'm excited for that. That's exactly what I wanted to happen with that game, the change I wanted to see. And the last of the expansions that All Play is releasing to retail in January 2023 is QE Commodities. QE was a really fun auction bidding game, and the thing that set it apart from other auction games was there was no limit to what you could spend. And so oftentimes the game would start with people bidding $100 and end with people bidding $100 billion, whatever it was. And so it felt wacky because the amounts to win each round would sort of keep going up and up and up. In QE Commodities, there are new investment opportunities for each country. You have the ability to diversify your portfolio by investing in gold, oil, and crypto. Ooh, feels very relevant. Just make sure you don't get had by a crypto scam, So they're also, one of the other things that this expansion does is it also enables you to lower your total spending throughout the game, providing extra layers of strategy. So in the base version of the game, it's just rising, and getting to wild amounts. And in this, you can actually lower your total spending amount. And the other thing about the base game was if you bid the most, you couldn't win. So you were trying to bid high to win some of them, but not overbid sometimes. And so, yeah, this just adds new strategy to QE. Very fun. Cranio Creations is releasing Mystery House Adventures in a Box, The Secret of Pharaoh expansion. So Mystery House was a game that came out a number of years ago where it was like an escape room type of game, but it had a big 3D house. That was the thing that set it apart, was this sort of three-dimensional house, and you could search for clues by shining a flashlight into it and looking through different rooms and stuff like that. You had to solve riddles. Well, this just sort of makes it even bigger. So there's not just the house, the pop-up, three-dimensional house. Now you have a pyramid, a new 3D structure that gets put right into the middle of the house. So, feels pretty wild there, where there's just a pyramid right in the middle of it, like your wildest dreams. So you're still trying to solve some mysteries. You have to enter the pyramid and reveal mysteries and secrets of the ancient Egyptians. So yeah, it's a fun, and it's definitely a family weight type of game, that sort of thing. But fun three-dimensional aspect to it. So I talked about a couple of games in my best games coming to retail video. If you haven't checked that out, I recommend checking it out. I talked about a couple of games from Daily Magic Games. One was Dice Kingdoms of Valeria, and one was Siege of Valeria. And both of those are getting expansions. So not only did the games come out in January, well, they also released expansions at the same time for those games. So Dice Kingdoms of Valeria is a roll and write game set in the Valeria world that Daily Magic Games does a lot of stuff in. So fun artwork, cool theme, and this winter expansion, as I mentioned, it was a roll and write, but this adds new themed winter maps to the game. So if you want to have a bunch of different content for Dice Kingdoms of Valeria, now you can, add snowy castles and forest player pads and stuff like that to the game. The other game that I talked about them releasing in January was Siege of Valeria, which was a one-player only game, a tower defense style game where monsters and siege cannons were coming at your tower and you had to defeat them and preserve your tower. Well, what this is the Siege of Valeria campaign expansion. So not only is this just a single, you can add a campaign to the game instead of just playing through monsters, killing monsters, the game being done. Well, now there's rules for a multi-game series that will test your skill at defeating the troops and siege engines arrayed at you. So yeah, if you want to be able to have, a campaign where you're leveling up your character and fighting along a storyline, well, now you have a chance to do that for Siege of Valeria. Hachette Board Games released the second expansion to Nidavellir. This is called Idavoll. Nidavellir, one of my top 20 games of all time. Easily one of my favorite games ever. It is a bidding game where you are trying to recruit dwarves into your army and build up your dwarven army. And different colored dwarves are going to score in different ways. Well, Idavoll adds 4 new types of cards to Nidavellir. You will have god cards, giants, Valkyries, and mythical animals. So these will replace some of the dwarves and give you points in different ways and just add a bunch of replay to the game. Nidavellir I love partly because it's one of those games that has a ton of choices and strategy in it but plays in 45 minutes, and I feel like I can teach it to most people. So I'm excited about the Idavoll expansion because it's just going to add more replayability to the game. Rio Grande Games is releasing multiple expansions this month. One is Pictures Christmas, so just in time for Christmas, here in January, it's coming out. Just in time for Christmas. Boy, there's still a lot of delays in the world of shipping, if you didn't know. It's frustrating, I'm sure, for some people where they're like, this is going to come out in November, and then shipping delays, and now it's hitting retail in January. But Pictures was a really great game that I believe won one of the Spiel des Jahres awards for board games several years ago. It's a party type game where you have cards and you are using objects like shoelaces or sticks or blocks, and you are trying to recreate the picture with these objects and get people to guess the picture just based off of using these objects. Well, Pictures Christmas adds a bunch of Christmas themed stuff to the game. There's going to be a bunch of Christmas pictures. There's also going to be new physical materials that you can use that are all kind of reminiscent of Christmas stuff. You've got a cotton ball, you've got a little ornament, you've got stuff like that, a star that'll help you recreate stuff. So it just, takes the family party game of Pictures and gives it a Christmas overlay to it. So that sounds fun. Another game that's coming out from Rio Grande Games this month is Jump Drive Terminal Velocity. So Jump Drive is a game from several years ago where you were racing to build the best empire of alien worlds and new technologies. So in this new expansion, you're adding new game cards, you're adding optional start worlds and goals, you're adding material for a 5th player, so instead of playing 1 to 4 players, it's 1 to 5 players, and there's a series of 5 challenges to play solo. So if you were a fan of Jump Drive, a good space-themed board game, well, now you got more content with Jump Drive Terminal Velocity. Another game that I talked about them releasing, Rio Grande Games releasing in the just January retail video, the normal retail video, was Crossing Oceans, which wasn't an expansion or a new edition of their game Transatlantic. It was taking the core concepts of Transatlantic and making a new game out of it. Well, they're also releasing an expansion this month. They're calling Crossing Oceans Upgrade Kit for Transatlantic. So if you own Transatlantic and you want to play this Crossing Oceans game, you can buy this expansion and just adds the content and the rule changes to Transatlantic so you can turn it into the game of Crossing Oceans. It's a game where you are adding ships to the board and trying to build trade routes and stuff like that. So instead of, if you own Transatlantic and you want to try Crossing Oceans, instead of just buying Crossing Oceans, you can buy this less expensive expansion for Transatlantic and turn it into Crossing Oceans. So those are my best expansions coming to retail in January, but I also like to throw in a few new additions to this video. You know, games that are getting new, fresh reprints, either from new publishers or for the same publisher. Yeah, so I got a few of those this month. Chip Theory Games is releasing Hoplomachus Remastered. They also released to retail this month Hoplomachus Victorum. These are both standalone games. Hoplomachus Victorum was a single player only game. Hoplomachus Remastered essentially takes everything from the original series, the very best content from Hoplomachus The Lost Cities and Hoplomachus Rise of Rome, as well as several of their expansions, and combines the best of all of those games into this one game. So this is essentially making Hoplomachus, all of the Hoplomachus content better and in one place. So, you know, it's got multiple combat modes, subtle variation between factions. Also, this Hoplomachus Remastered, where Victorum was a single-player only game, this is both a solo, 2-player cooperative game and 2 to 4-player competitive game, all in this Hoplomachus Remastered. And I should note that Victorum and Remastered are standalone titles. Their Gladiator and Tactic chips are cross-compatible between both games, allowing players to mix and match chips for even more gameplay options. Nidavellir Games is releasing a couple of versions of their Mazescape games. So Mazescape, they've released multiple of these games over the past years. It is a solo-only game, which is a puzzly logic sort of, you're trying to figure out the maze. It is a maze game, but it's using logic and deduction and all that sort of stuff. And so they're releasing both a version for adults and for kids this month. One, Mazescape's XP Cryo-C is the adult version, and it's got the theme of the supply ship unexpectedly, the computer of the supply ship unexpectedly awakens from suspended animation. And again, it's a very puzzly game. They're also releasing Mazescape Kids Hipnos. So if you want a game like a puzzly maze game for your 8, 9, 10-year-old, then check out Mazescape Kids Hipnos. And then last for this month, I have SourcePoint Games, which split off from Deep Water Games not too long ago, is releasing Floor Plan, the Winchester Mystery House. So Floor Plan came out a number of years ago. It was a roll and write style game where on your turn, based on the dice rolls, you could either draw a new floor, a new room in your floor plan, or you could add features to a room that you've already drawn. Well, this new version, the Floor Plan Winchester Mystery House, essentially gives a theme to that game of the Winchester Mystery House. If you've never heard of the Winchester Mystery House, it's a wacky house where the person kept adding rooms and features all the time. So there are hallways that, diminish in size. There are doors that open to concrete walls to nowhere. There's just a bunch of crazy stuff in that house. And so this is using that theme in the Floor Plan game. So still a roll and write, a roll and draw, I suppose, game where you're trying to make a floor plan, but you're trying to make a floor plan for the wacky Winchester Mystery House game. So yeah, that's what I got for you. Hopefully you found something here that you like. Maybe you didn't know something was coming out for one of your favorite games out there, and now you got some more content for it. As I mentioned, I do this video every month. My best games coming to retail video usually comes out around the middle of the month, and this one comes out a little bit after that. So thanks so much for subscribing and liking. I talk to a lot of publishers to make these best games coming to retail videos. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing and liking them and subscribing to the channel. I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex. Enjoy playing games out there.